Okay, good afternoon friends. So today is the last class of economic survey 11th and 12th chapters. Luckily you don't have the second volume. Okay, had second volume there I could have spent more time on second volume, because this volume you can understand to some extent, though you are having some difficulty. But anyhow, 11th chapter is external sector, watchful and hopeful. You know why we are hopeful? Because of some international conditions, and there is a rupee pressure, and you may not export much, import cost may increase. So these are all the problems that we have. So that is the reason why it is still watchful and hopeful. Two global shocks in the new millennium, one an economic shock and the other a health shock, have had very contrasting repercussions on the global economy. That is 2008 economic crisis, 2020 COVID-19. So one is an economic shock and another one is health shock. So both are having a contrasting repercussions on the global economy. Following the global financial crisis in 2007-8, as the inflationary pressure were muted, interest rates were extremely low for a long years. The easing financial conditions supported global economic growth, which reached 4.5% in 2010. So in the post 2007-8 crisis, there was a collapse of bank. As a result, there is no demand. So to promote growth, we have eased the financial conditions. As a result of easing of financial conditions, the global growth reached to 4.5% in 2010. After that, we experienced a taper tantrum crisis, but taper tantrum affected only developing countries, not the developed countries. They increase the interest rate, you will suffer, they don't suffer. Now, the COVID-19 pandemic is another shock to global growth performance, with economic growth down to a negative of 3.8% in 2010, minus 3.8 in 2020. Following 2 years saw inflation rates rise to multi-decade high. You know what is that multi-decade high? You know about what was the range in USA, UK, Germany and all these countries. Multi-decade high, fueled by global commodity and food price spikes. So global commodity prices increased, global food price also increased. The situation has been further amplified by Russia-Ukraine conflict. The 10-year treasury yield in the US increased almost sixfold between mid-2020 and mid-2022. That is how in United States of America has increased the interest rate. So when they increase the interest rate, automatically treasury yields also increased. So the increased interest rate is not good for any country, but anyhow that is an obvious thing that they have to do when the inflation is very high. Global growth is forecasted to slow from 6.0% in 2021 to 3.2% in 2022 to 2.7% in 2023 according to the IMF. So the global growth is declining. Already IMF has issued this warning 3 months back. 3 months, not 3.5 months back, they have issued this warning. They said it clearly. See, now the global growth is going to come down. This will have its own impact. Now, because inflation, actually they said like, this is only projection. They said like inflation across the world is increasing. When inflation across the world is increasing means, you will certainly increase the interest rate. That interest rate will happen across the world. If you follow the monetary adjustment to the growing inflation, definitely your growth will come down. I think you can understand the statement. But what World Bank has said is, instead of increasing the interest rate, make sure that supply chains should not get disturbed. Make sure that the government provide enough incentive for more and more production. That can save the world from the recession. But if you simply follow a conventional economic practice, like whenever there is an inflation, then you start increasing the interest rate, your global growth certainly comes down to 2.7%. That is what the advice given by the IMF and World Bank. Okay. So whether you will control the inflation either by taking away the money or by promoting the growth or promoting the supply chain mechanism, because this is altogether a supply side crisis. When the crisis is supply side, if you just take away the money from the economy, that is a stupid thing that we are doing. But anyhow, this is a very this is an instrument which gives the results in a shorter span of time. Simply if you take away the money, definitely it will have its own impact. But when the reason is supply side reason, how can you take back the money from the economy? Until and unless you restore the supply chain mechanism, this will not be solved. Okay, the person may stop spending today, but the pent up demand at one or other time it will come back again. So the thing is, you have to settle this supply chain system. That is what the advice given by the World Bank. External public debt vulnerability concerns are being exacerbated, as such debt in developing economies is at record levels presently, and most of it's owed to private creditors, with much of it involving variable interest rate that could spike suddenly. The deadly combination. One is external debt. That too for a developing country. External debt, that too for a developing country, that is at the record level of high, that means high record level, that too with the private creditors, not to the sovereigns, that too with the private creditors, that too with the variable interest rate, not even fixed interest rate. So that means, so you have to pay high interest, you have to pay in dollars, you have to pay to the private people, you are a developing economy, your debt is at high level, and the global condition is so bad. So you can imagine how deadly combination it is. Thus, emerging markets face a host of risks emanating from elevated. So, what are the risks to the emerging markets? External borrowing cost, you can understand. Sticky, high inflation. There is a high inflation. That high inflation is sticky. That means it's not moving, it's constant. Volatile commodity markets. Uncertain global growth outlook. Spillovers from policy tightening in advanced economies. That means monetary tightening. So spillover from the policy tightening in advanced economies, uncertainty in global economic growth outlook, volatile commodity market, sticky, high inflation, external borrowing cost. So these are the challenges for the external, for the emerging markets. Growth in global merchandise trade, actual and forecast. Volume forecast. This black is forecast, red is also forecast, April, October. So in April, the forecast was something high, but by the time of October, we realized that we don't achieve that much. So it has reduced. We thought it will recover, but it won't. So value or volume as a year on year change, that is only up to 2021. Anyway, that data is not, we want data in 2022. Anyway, it will take some time to get the data. Obviously it comes down. Okay, value comes down. We don't know about volume. value may comes down, because see the projection. See here we are in 2021, your projection itself is low. Your projection itself is low, and after that it is much more low. So definitely the actual has to follow. Okay, value will also come down. India's trade catching up with global trade levels. Total trade as a percentage of GDP. Total trade as a percentage of GDP, that includes exports and imports. Trade in the sense exports and imports as a percentage of GDP. In India, what is that level? In the world, what is that level? First, let me take India. When your reforms are started, almost 18% of your GDP. But today, okay, forget about this down, but otherwise, what is the maximum level? Almost 55. There are some year where 55% of your GDP is contributed by the world trade. Okay, but anyhow, now it has reduced, it has settled at 45.3. So the same case with the world. Anyway, if the world trade comes down, that will impact India's trade. Not like India's trade will impact the world trade. So in the world level also, something it is above 60, that means world's GDP, world's trade. So now world's GDP to trade has reduced and India has followed the same path. India has followed the same path. Though it is not highly symmetric, but you can see the same thing. So that is why you cannot decouple yourself from the world economy. If the world economy is growing means, if the world trade, that means world trade is growing. If the world trade is growing means Indian trade will grow. If Indian trade is growing, Indian GDP will grow. Okay. So you can see where there is a dip, again dip, again dip, again dip. Okay. Again increase, again increase. Okay. World Bank database 1991 to 2021. Key aspects of India's trade calendar year wise, not financial year, because in the world level, at the world level, you will take calendar year. Export performance in percentage, share in world merchandise exports 1.7, okay, that is in terms of value only. Share in world commercial service exports, yesterday we seen from 3 to 4%. Did you remember? So 3.5 in 2019, 4.0, 4.0. Share in merchandise exports in last 2021 is 1.8. Share in world merchandise plus services exports 2.2. That means total exports 2.2. When it comes to the imports, merchandise imports 2.5, commercial service imports 3.5, total imports 2.7. That means India is having hardly 2% of world trade. Indian share in the world trade is how much? 2%. Only 2%. India's rank in the world trade. Okay, in exports, imports, service exports, service imports. Okay. Anyway, this is not important, just these numbers are important, around 2%. Okay. So that is the India's share in the world trade. India's merchandise exports. India's merchandise exports. It is quarter wise they have given. But if you see Q1, Q2, Q3 last year quarter 4. Last year quarter 4 means Russia-Ukraine war. After that continuously it is declining. Our exports are continuously declining. I am not talking about service exports. I am talking about merchandise exports. Okay. Petroleum and oil exports. Anyway, I will come to that petroleum later, but non-POL exports are important. Non-petroleum and oil. Okay. See, Q1 plus Q2 plus Q3 plus Q4. You take the year financial year 22. Actually, this is a, okay, financial year 22. This Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. If you take both non-POL and POL, that means the merchandise exports, India achieved an all-time high annual merchandise exports of 422 billion in financial year 2022. And services will comes into another 300 plus. Total it is something like 750 close to 800. And our target is to achieve $1 trillion per annum. Our target. Both merchandise and services. Normally for every 5 years we will have this Indian trade policy. But in an uncertain condition, we don't want to bring a new policy, we are continuing the old policy. And our target is to achieve $1 trillion of exports, which include merchandise and as well as the services. And when I am explaining the newspaper, I think still I remember, normally you are maintaining the surplus in services, deficit in the merchandise. That doesn't mean that we are exporting more amount of services, no. In an absolute number, merchandise value is very high. Okay, in an absolute number, merchandise value is very high compared to that of services. Okay, but anyhow, I will show that. So, India achieved an all-time high annual merchandise exports of $422 billion. But anyway, you can't get that number again. You can't get that number again. This year, you don't get, maybe next year. India's merchandise imports. Anyway, you can see the petroleum imports. Where we are, see quarter wise you see 13, 19, 22, 29. Same 13 become 31, 2021 is a COVID-19 year. So low prices. Now see 31, 39, 43, 49. So here Russia-Ukraine war. Again see 53, 57. Later it started slowing down. Okay. So this is about petroleum imports. That means every year how much we spend for the petroleum imports? On average how much? Even if you take 40, 40, 40, 160. Don't take 160, let it be 140. $140 billion. $140 billion. So that you can't take the 2020, 21 year because COVID-19 year, there is no much demand for the petroleum. So on average, you will take some 130 to 140 billion dollars. We will spend it on importing of petroleum and oil, petroleum crude. So that is the level of investment. Okay, 100 more than 100 billion. When it comes to the imports of others, I think this year it will cross again 400 and okay. You just take this one 100, 100, 200, 200 plus 170, 370, 370 plus another 100, petroleum, 470, 470 plus that extra remaining 30 or 40, more than 500. So this is, okay. So that means, and gold and silver imports, okay, anyway that comes into again 30, some 40, you can add it 40, let it be 550. So this is how, that means some $400 billion of exports, $550 billion of imports, $150 billion of deficit. Did you understand? This is how you need to understand. Okay. These are the numbers, just keep it in your mind, no one will ask. Okay. Because when you are looking into the economy, if these numbers are in your mind, then it will be very easy for you to understand. The people who don't understand all these exports and imports, they never understand what is current account deficit. They'll always confuse what is this current account, what is this capital account, what is this invisible account, merchandise, services. But you must, if you're looking into the data, you can understand it easily. Okay. And again I am talking about only merchandise imports. I have not included even services. Trends in merchandise, imports, exports and trade balance. Okay, now I am talking about trade account. See, again total imports, total exports, trade balance. Anyway, you will not be in a balance, you are all aware we are always in deficit. See, take the case of this quarter. Q4, how much deficit? 60. Q3, 40, 100. Q1, Q2, let it be 70. 170, am I right? 60 plus 40, 100. 70, 31, 41. Okay. Any doubt? Just a minute. 74 is for this. 81 is for this. Okay, 60. Okay, 50, 60, 110. 110 plus 40, 150. Again, I am getting extra. 180 I am getting. Okay. So anyhow, so just count that 4. Huh? So almost it is $180 billion of deficit in merchandise only. This year you take 2023, 70 plus 80, 150, 150 plus 60, 150 plus 60, 210. Already we crossed $200 billion of deficit. Anyway, this will get compensated little extent by the services, but this is the thing, the deficit. That is why the estimates are current account deficit will increase this year. Current account deficit will increase this year. Okay, and most of them contributed by both POL and non-POL, because you can see here. See imports, no? Yeah. Yes, because the average number you can see, in the range of 90, 80, 85, but you see 100. But there is a more increase in petroleum. Okay. So it's not just because of increasing petroleum products alone. The other imports are also become so costlier. Okay. Don't think like only because of petroleum. No. Even we have seen in wholesale price index, I have shown, I already showed. Okay. The metal prices also increased. So this is the trade. This is the trade account. Imports, export, balance. Okay. Some information. The USA remained the top export destination in April-November 2022, followed by UAE and Netherlands. Only for 6 months. But anyhow, top export destination is what? United States of America for India. So India, UAE, Netherlands. Acha, okay. USA, UAE, Netherlands. USA, UAE, Netherlands. Netherlands has displaced China from the 3rd spot as India's exporting partner. Earlier it was USA, UAE, China, but now it is USA, UAE, Netherlands. India has, very, very important, India has diversified its export destinations over time. See, this export diversification is very, very important. I'll come to the, again I'll go to the chapter, maybe chapter number 1 or 2. See, this, whenever there was an economic crisis in the country, then I said you have depended on exports. Exports saved you. At the international level, when exports are not permitting, you have started shifting focus on domestic demand. So in either way, that leads to GDP growth. But can really domestic demand replaces the export demand? It's not possible. Then what you have to do? The best way to do is diversify the exports. Instead of exporting $100 billion to a particular country, let diversify and make relations with other countries so that you can export to the other countries whatever the small items. So one insurance that you have is diversification of exports. If you simply depending on United States of America or UK, if something happened to that, no one will purchase. So that is why it's better to have a diversification in terms of destination, diversification in terms of products. Both the things are required. Okay, if you export only one product to only one country, then it is a very deadly combination. Okay, so India, and survey is saying like India has diversified its export destinations over a time. For example, the share of South Africa in total export has risen from 1.2% to 2.0%. Okay. Next, over the same period, share of Brazil has increased from 1.2% to 2.5%. Saudi Arabia from 1.7% to 2.3%. 2.3%. That means India started diversifying exports. Suppose if you are writing this point for any reason, just mention according to economic survey, the share with South Africa, Saudi Arabia, Brazil increased. As regards imports, China, UAE, USA, Russia and Saudi Arabia has a joint share of 40% of the total imports of India. Which countries? China, UAE, USA, Russia, and you are all aware about Russia. This year because of oil, earlier also not because of oil but arms, this defense equipment and oil. And some, let it be that sunflower oil, and some these metals used in semiconductor devices. Okay. However, the share of China declined, important. However, the share of China declined to 13.8% during April-November from 15.5% a year ago. That means the imports from China is reducing. And another important development related to imports from China is, earlier we used to import the finished products from China, but now we are importing intermediary goods or raw material. Anyway, that's a good thing. Similarly, the share of USA has declined to 6.9% from 7.2%. So we have to do this fully, because if you start depending on only one or two countries, it won't serve the purpose. So likewise, you have to shift the export destination. Resilient performance of service trade. Okay. Till now I discussed about merchandise. Now it is about services. Total services exports, imports. You can see total exports in merchandise in the year 2021-22 is $400 billion, 411. But services how much? Only 250. Only 250. So don't think like we are maintaining balance in services. That doesn't mean that we are doing more service exports. No. We are doing more merchandise exports. But merchandise imports is also very high. That's the problem. Okay. Exports is how much? Okay, 206, 117. In 21-22, 254, 147. In April-September 2022, 156, 90. In that, which services are contributing more? Is there any other thing? This is only, no? It includes what? Telecommunication, computer and information services. And don't think like only software services are the services that we are exporting from India. What are the other services? Transport services, travel services, maintenance and repair services, manufacturing services and physical inputs, insurance and pension services, financial services, intellectual property services, government goods and services, like all these things. Okay. But majority of the services are from telecommunication, computer and information services. And easily by looking into these numbers, we can say like we are in surplus. So on invisible account we are maintaining the surplus, on trade account we are maintaining the deficit. Okay. Accelerating trend in services trade. Services export, services imports, net of service. I think all the net is positive. If you see the positive, just calculate it for 21-22, 26-26, 52, 52 plus 56, 52 plus 56. More than $100 billion of surplus we are maintaining in invisible account or services account. Is it clear? This is exports. Okay. The number that comes to the same number, some 250, more than 2. Shall I move to the next? Okay.
Amrita IAS Academy.